Most people believe that love and work exist in completely separate worlds. One is personal, the other professional. But what if I told you that the very same skills that build lasting love are the ones that create trust, collaboration, and resilience at work? Think about it. Relationships, whether at home or in the office, are built on trust, communication, and respect. When these elements are missing, both love and work begin to crumble. Esther Perel, one of the most insightful voices on modern relationships, reminds us that our private and professional worlds are not disconnected. They mirror each other. The question is not, how do I succeed in work separate from love? But rather, what can love teach us about work? And what can work teach us about love? In this conversation, we'll explore why your most human qualities, empathy, vulnerability, curiosity, are not weaknesses in the workplace, but your greatest strengths. Because if we can learn to love with honesty, patience, and courage, then we can learn to lead, collaborate, and innovate with the very same values. So today isn't about love or work, it's about connection. And when we get connection right, everything else begins to fall into place. Imagine for a moment that love and work are not two different arenas, but two stages where the same play is acted out with slightly different scripts. In one, we're partners, lovers, spouses. In the other, we're colleagues, leaders, teammates. Yet beneath the roles, the human needs are strikingly similar: the need to be trusted, the desire to be seen, the wish to belong, and the fear of being misunderstood or left behind. What Esther Perel has spent a lifetime studying in the dynamics of intimate relationships applies just as powerfully to the way we build professional ones. Think of a love relationship. At its core, it thrives not because two people never disagree, but because they learn how to disagree without destroying trust. They learn how to have conversations where difficult truths can be spoken and still leave space for repair, for renewal, for intimacy. In the workplace, the same is true. Teams collapse not because of conflict itself, but because of the absence of trust that allows conflict to become toxic. When people feel safe to voice concerns, when they can argue with respect and challenge with care, that is where collaboration begins to flourish. We often draw a line in our minds: this is personal, that is professional. But in reality, the same human being shows up in both places. If at home you're accustomed to shutting down in the face of tension, you'll likely carry that reflex to work. If in your personal relationships you've learned to listen deeply, to ask questions with curiosity rather than judgment, you'll bring that same skill to the office. Our patterns of love bleed into our patterns of work. The reverse is also true. A workplace that cultivates mutual respect and empathy doesn't just make you a better teammate, it gives you practice at being a better partner outside of work as well. Esther Perel often says that modern relationships thrive on balancing two essential needs: the need for security and the need for freedom. We crave stability, yet we also long for growth and adventure. At work, we see the same tension. People want to feel grounded. They want clarity, fairness, reliability. But they also want room to explore, to innovate, to express creativity. If we can't hold both at once, just as in love, we suffocate the relationship. Leaders who give only freedom without structure create chaos. Leaders who give only stability without space for imagination create stagnation. The wisdom lies in learning how to balance both. The same is true for vulnerability. In love, intimacy begins where masks come off, where imperfection is not only tolerated but embraced. In work, this translates into psychological safety. A team where people feel they must always appear strong, flawless, and certain is a team that slowly kills creativity. It is in admitting "I don't know" or "I need help" that innovation is born. Vulnerability makes collaboration possible, just as it makes love possible. And what about communication? In our personal lives, we know that tone matters, timing matters, presence matters. A careless word or a distracted glance can send a partner spiraling into doubt. At work, the same dynamics play out. A leader who listens half-heartedly, a colleague who dismisses an idea, a manager who criticizes without care. These small moments erode trust. On the other hand, just as in love, small gestures of kindness, acknowledgement, and genuine appreciation build bonds that last through the inevitable storms. The greatest lesson love teaches us about work is this: success is not about efficiency or perfection, it is about connection. In every sphere of our lives, connection is what sustains us. When we learn to show up with empathy, to navigate conflict with respect, to balance freedom with stability, to embrace vulnerability as strength, we create spaces, at home and at work, where people can not only perform but belong. And when people feel they belong, that's when the extraordinary becomes possible. Trust, communication, and respect are often spoken about as if they are optional extras, things we can choose to emphasize once everything else is running smoothly. Yet in truth, they are the very foundation upon which every relationship stands, whether it is the intimacy of a marriage or the collaboration of a team. Without trust, every word is second, guessed. Without communication, misunderstandings multiply. Without respect, even the smallest conflict becomes a fracture that grows with time. What we know instinctively in love, we too often forget in work. And what we too often assume in work, we fail to carry back into love. Esther Perel reminds us that the walls we think exist between our personal and professional lives are far more porous than we imagine. When two people fall in love, trust is rarely built in grand declarations. It is built in the daily consistency of showing up, of keeping promises, of listening without judgment. We trust those who do what they say they will do, who hold our confidences, who respect our boundaries. In the workplace, the same laws apply. A colleague earns our trust not because of their title or authority, but because of their reliability, their transparency, and their integrity. We begin to trust when we know someone will both protect our interests and tell us the truth. And once trust is present, even hard conversations feel safer because we believe the other person has our best interests at heart. Communication is the lifeline that keeps trust alive. In love, silence can become a weapon. Words left unsaid grow heavier with time until they suffocate the relationship. In work, silence breeds assumptions, and assumptions erode teamwork. Just as in intimate partnerships, honest and timely conversations at work prevent small frustrations from becoming large resentments. Great communication is not only about speaking clearly, it is about listening with presence. It is about hearing not just the words, but the intent and the emotion behind them. When people feel heard, they are more willing to contribute, to risk sharing new ideas, to stretch into new possibilities. Respect is the element that makes both trust and communication sustainable. In love, respect means honoring the individuality of the other person, their space, their dreams, their differences. In work, respect means valuing every contribution, regardless of hierarchy. When respect is absent, the most talented partner or employee will eventually withdraw. But when respect is consistently present, people feel safe to take chances, to innovate, to step into vulnerability. Respect affirms dignity, and dignity fuels motivation. The interplay of these three, trust, communication, respect, creates an ecosystem where relationships thrive. Remove one and the balance collapses. A marriage without respect becomes controlling. A team without communication becomes fragmented. A partnership without trust becomes hollow. But together, they form a triangle strong enough to hold both love and work through the weight of challenges. Perhaps the most striking insight is that these qualities do not live in separate compartments. How we communicate with our loved ones is how we will eventually communicate at work. The habits we practice with our partners, whether defensive or open, dismissive or curious, do not vanish when we walk into the office. The same patterns repeat themselves. This means that the way to strengthen our work relationships is often to pay closer attention to our personal ones, and the way to build better love is to practice the skills that make us better colleagues. What Esther Perel challenges us to see is that relationships, whether personal or professional, are not defined by the roles we play, but by the quality of the space we create between us. And in that space, trust, communication, and respect are not negotiable. They are everything. Vulnerability is one of those words that makes many people uncomfortable, especially in a professional setting. We are conditioned to believe that strength means holding everything together, projecting confidence, and hiding uncertainty. But if we look at the relationships that matter most to us, we find the opposite is true. In love, intimacy begins where pretenses end. The moment we allow someone to see us as we are, with our flaws, fears, and imperfections, is the moment true closeness begins. Without vulnerability, love becomes performance. Without vulnerability at work, teams become groups of actors reading from scripts, never truly collaborating. Consider what happens in a romantic partnership. When one person admits, "I was wrong," or "I need you," they open a door for connection. That honesty may feel risky, but it creates trust. The other person feels invited to step in, to share their own truth, to offer support. That shared vulnerability becomes the soil where love grows. In the workplace, the same principle applies. When a leader says, "I don't have all the answers, let's figure this out together," it doesn't weaken authority, it strengthens it. It shows the team that honesty is valued over pretense, and that collaboration is more important than control. The absence of vulnerability leads to walls. In love, it looks like partners hiding parts of themselves, creating distance, and eventually feeling unknown by the very person they long to be closest to. At work, it looks like employees who never speak up, leaders who never admit mistakes, teams that never innovate because no one feels safe enough to risk being wrong. Perfection is an illusion, and when we chase it, we suffocate the very creativity and trust that both love and work require. Vulnerability is not about oversharing or burdening others with every detail of our inner lives. It is about authenticity. It is about saying, "This is where I'm struggling," or "This is what matters to me." It is about letting others see enough of our humanity that they feel permission to share theirs. In love, that creates intimacy. In work, it creates psychological safety, the invisible glue that allows people to take risks, share ideas, and innovate without fear of judgment. Esther Perel reminds us that the paradox of vulnerability is that what feels like weakness is actually strength. The courage to be open, to admit fear or uncertainty, is the foundation of trust, and trust is the foundation of every strong relationship. When we pretend to be invulnerable, others may admire us, but they cannot connect with us. It is only when we show our humanity that true connection begins. Think about the leaders you have admired most in your life. Chances are they were not the ones who always seemed invincible. They were the ones who admitted mistakes, who asked for help, who created space for others to shine. Just as in love, the most memorable moments are rarely the flawless ones. They are the moments of honesty, of struggle, of shared imperfection. These are the moments that bond us. In both love and work, vulnerability creates a cycle. One person takes the risk of being open, and in doing so, makes it safer for the other to do the same. That cycle builds trust, deepens respect, and strengthens connection. The absence of it, on the other hand, creates distance, defensiveness, and disconnection. If love teaches us anything about work, it is that people do not want to follow perfection. They want to follow truth. They do not want to collaborate with masks. They want to collaborate with people. And the path to that truth, to that realness, is paved with vulnerability. Curiosity is often spoken about as if it belongs only to children or scientists, but in truth, it is the lifeblood of every thriving relationship, whether personal or professional. In love, curiosity is what keeps intimacy alive. It is the willingness to ask, "Who are you becoming?" rather than assuming we already know. It is the spark that keeps two people growing together instead of growing apart. In work, curiosity is the force that fuels innovation, collaboration, and growth. When teams stop being curious, they stop learning, and when they stop learning, they slowly wither. Think about how love begins. At the start of a relationship, everything is fueled by curiosity. We want to know the other person's stories, their dreams, their fears, the small details that make them unique. That curiosity makes us attentive, alive, and invested. But over time, assumptions take its place. We start to believe we already know the other person fully, and in doing so, we stop discovering. This is when relationships begin to lose their spark, not because love has disappeared, but because curiosity has. The same cycle plays out in professional life. At the beginning of a project, a job, or a collaboration, curiosity is abundant. We ask questions, we explore, we challenge. But over time, routine replaces inquiry. We settle into patterns. We assume we know how things should be done, and in doing so, we stop seeing new possibilities. Just as love requires us to keep asking, keep discovering, so too does meaningful work. When we stay curious, we stay alive to opportunity. Esther Perel often highlights that curiosity is the antidote to judgment. In relationships, when conflict arises, our first instinct is often to judge. You're wrong, you always do this, you never understand. Judgment shuts the door to connection. Curiosity, however, opens it. Why do you feel this way? What need of yours isn't being met? What am I not seeing? At work, the same principle applies. A culture of judgment breeds blame and defensiveness. A culture of curiosity invites learning, empathy, and growth. Instead of asking who is at fault, we can ask, what can we learn? How can we do better next time? Curiosity also plays a critical role in creativity. In love, curiosity keeps us playful, helps us rediscover our partner, and allows us to adapt as both people change. In work, curiosity fuels invention, encourages experimentation, and leads to breakthroughs. The companies and teams that thrive are the ones that ask more questions than they answer. They approach challenges with a beginner's mind, never assuming they know it all, always open to learning from unexpected sources. But curiosity requires humility. To be curious is to admit that we don't have all the answers. In love, that humility allows us to keep learning about someone we think we already know. In work, that humility allows us to listen to others, to learn from those with different experiences, to recognize that wisdom is often found in places we least expect. Without humility, curiosity dies, because curiosity cannot coexist with arrogance. Relationships, both romantic and professional, stagnate when curiosity disappears. We stop asking, we stop exploring, we stop imagining. But when curiosity is alive, relationships evolve, teams grow stronger, and innovation becomes possible. Love reminds us that curiosity is what keeps connection alive. Work reminds us that curiosity is what keeps progress alive. Both teach us that curiosity is not optional, it is essential. In every relationship we encounter, whether personal or professional, conflict is inevitable. What defines the strength of that relationship is not the absence of conflict, but the way it is handled. In love, disagreements are not a sign of weakness, but an opportunity to deepen understanding, to reveal what truly matters to each person, and to find new ways of moving forward together. In work, the same truth applies. Conflict can either erode trust or strengthen it, depending entirely on how it is navigated. The remarkable insight is that the very skills that allow us to sustain love, empathy, patience, the ability to listen, are the same skills that allow us to collaborate, lead, and innovate effectively. When we think about love, we often imagine harmony, yet lasting relationships are forged in the fire of difficult conversations. The ability to say, "This hurt me," or "I need something different," without turning it into blame, is what allows couples to grow together rather than apart. These conversations require courage, but they also require compassion. It is not enough to simply state our truth. We must also be willing to hear the truth of the other person, even when it challenges us. This is what transforms conflict from a battle into a bridge. At work, the dynamics are strikingly similar. Teams that avoid conflict in the name of harmony often find themselves stagnant, stuck in patterns where unspoken frustrations quietly undermine collaboration. But teams that embrace conflict as a tool for learning discover that differences of opinion can lead to sharper insights and better outcomes. The difference lies in whether the conflict is framed as an attack or as an opportunity. Just as in love, the key lies in empathy, choosing to understand before seeking to be understood. Empathy is not simply about agreeing with the other person. It is about acknowledging that their perspective is valid, even if it is not the same as ours. In love, this may mean recognizing that your partner's silence is not rejection, but perhaps exhaustion. At work, it may mean recognizing that a colleague's resistance is not sabotage, but fear of change. When we choose empathy, we move from defensiveness to curiosity, from judgment to connection. Patience plays an equally vital role. In intimate relationships, change does not happen overnight. Patterns built over years take time to shift. The same is true in professional settings. A team adjusting to new leadership, or a company adapting to a new vision, will not transform instantly. Impatience breeds frustration, and frustration erodes trust. Patience, on the other hand, communicates faith that the other person or the team can rise to the challenge, that growth is possible even if it takes time. Listening is the practice that binds it all together. In love, true listening is more than waiting for our turn to speak. It is giving the other person our presence, allowing them to feel heard without interruption or judgment. At work, listening is equally transformative. Leaders who listen invite loyalty. Teammates who listen create collaboration. Listening communicates respect, and respect creates the conditions for both love and work to flourish. Conflict, when handled with empathy, patience, and listening, becomes a catalyst. In love, it leads to greater intimacy, as partners learn more about each other and themselves. In work, it leads to stronger collaboration, as teams refine ideas and uncover better solutions. Avoided or mishandled, conflict divides. Embraced with the right mindset, it unites. The greatest lesson love teaches us about work is that success is not found in the absence of struggle, but in the way we show up during the struggle. If we can bring empathy, patience, and listening to our conflicts, we not only resolve them, we transform them into opportunities for connection and growth. When we talk about belonging, it is easy to mistake it for simply fitting in. But fitting in means adjusting yourself to match the expectations of others, while belonging means being accepted as you are. In love, belonging is the deep sense that we are seen, valued, and cherished not for a role we play, but for the fullness of who we are. In work, belonging is the foundation of engagement, loyalty, and performance. When people feel they truly belong, they bring their whole selves to the relationship or to the team, and when they do not, they retreat, withdraw, and eventually disengage. In our personal relationships, belonging is created through consistency, care, and affirmation. We feel we belong when our partner notices the small details, when they remember what matters to us, when they celebrate our individuality instead of asking us to change it. The same principles apply in our professional lives. Belonging at work is not created through slogans on walls or grand gestures. It is created in daily actions. A leader who asks for input and genuinely considers it, a teammate who gives credit instead of taking it, a culture that values differences instead of suppressing them. These are the moments that create belonging. Belonging is not just a soft, emotional concept, it has tangible consequences. In love, when belonging is absent, distance creeps in. Partners may stay physically together but feel emotionally apart. At work, when belonging is absent, people may remain on the payroll but stop giving their best energy, their creativity, their ideas. Disconnection leads to disengagement, and disengagement erodes both intimacy and productivity. Esther Perel often emphasizes that the human need for belonging is universal. No matter who we are or where we come from, we long to be part of something greater than ourselves. This need shows up in the longing for family, community, friendship, and meaningful work. In love, belonging creates the secure base from which we can explore and grow. In work, belonging creates the safe environment where people can innovate, take risks, and collaborate without fear. The paradox of belonging is that it requires both acceptance and challenge. In love, we feel we belong not just when our partner accepts us, but also when they push us to grow, to expand, to become more of who we can be. In work, belonging is not about comfort alone. It is about being part of a team or an organization that believes in us enough to hold us accountable, to set high expectations, and to support us in reaching them. Too much comfort without challenge leads to stagnation. Too much challenge without belonging leads to burnout. The balance of the two creates thriving. Belonging is also deeply tied to recognition. In love, recognition might be as simple as I see you, I appreciate you, I value what you bring into my life. In work, recognition is often overlooked, yet it is one of the most powerful drivers of motivation. When people know that their contributions matter, when they are acknowledged for the effort they put in, they feel part of something larger than themselves. Recognition affirms worth, and worth fuels commitment. Ultimately, belonging is about connection. It is about the invisible threads that tie us together, reminding us that we are not alone, that we matter, and that we are part of a shared journey. Love teaches us how vital belonging is for our sense of self, while work reminds us how belonging shapes the collective. In both spaces, when we create belonging, we unlock not just performance or passion, but the full potential of human connection.